What a week it was in the Big 12 in week 4 of the college football season. Some shocking upsets, some really, really good performances, some really close football games. After the dust settled, after it was all said and done, where does each team rank in my power rankings after week 4? In this episode, which is brought to you in part by BetUS Online Sportsbook and Casino, along with Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law, I'm going to show you where these teams stand after week 4 of my power rankings. And we're going to do that right after this word from one of those sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up? Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Of course, I'm your host, Couz, and you're in the right place. So belly yourself up to the bar and let me pour you out this shot of top shelf college football content. If you like news and analysis about West Virginia, the Big 12, and conference realignment, then this is where you need to be. Please hit subscribe. Please like the video. And also don't forget to share it out with your family and friends. And let me know below in the comments what you think about these power rankings I'm getting ready to show you right now. Really, when you look at this league, I don't really see any top shelf teams in this league, to be honest with you. At least not when you compare, at least not right now. The way these teams are playing in this league, I don't see any team playing like a top shelf team. Especially when you compare them to the top teams in other leagues around the country. But this video and this exercise is comparing Big 12 teams to the other teams in the conference. So because of that, you have to have somebody up there, right? You have to have somebody that's the quote-unquote flag bearer or the top team in the league, at least one. So let's start off there with Utah. Are they still top shelf? Yes, they are. They win 22-19 in Stillwater without their starting quarterback. I think that's a big win. Oklahoma State, to me, is still a pretty good football team. Now, they had their struggles offensively, but a lot of that, you could say, is because of that Utah defense. They continue to play good defense. They continue not to ask Isaac Wilson to do too much as a young freshman quarterback. They ran the football with Michael Bernard to the tune of 187 yards and over 7 yards per carry, so he had a great day on the ground. And, again, they didn't ask Wilson to do too much. He threw it 24 times and completed 17 of those passes, had one touchdown. He did have 2 picks, so he's got to clean that up. But, hey, he's a freshman. And, again, he's doing what he needs to do to win games. Utah is 4-0 right now. They beat another top 15 ranked team in their place. So, to me, that's top shelf, and that's where they need to be. Now, if they don't get Cam Rising back at some point, I expect Utah to slip up at some point. I really do. But if Cam Rising can come back, in the preseason, this is the only game I picked Utah to lose, and they won it. So they could. They have arguably the easiest schedule in the conference. Now, that Holy War game looks a little tougher than it did early in the season, don't it? Which we'll talk about BYU later. But Utah could run the table here, especially if they get Cam Rising back. We'll see. It's going to be tough, but they could. Now, let's talk about Oklahoma State. They're on the losing end of that game, 22-19. They had a lot of struggles offensively. Mike Gundy talked about it in his postgame presser. When you look at their passing offense, they ended up playing 2 quarterbacks. Alan Bowman wasn't getting it done, so they brought Garrett Rangel in to start the third quarter. He played so bad they took him back out, put Bowman back in. But combined, those 2 quarterbacks were 19 of 44, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Not a good day. Ollie Gordon only ran for 42 yards, so they weren't moving the ball on the ground either. As a matter of fact, that's been kind of a theme here at Oklahoma State. Their running offense isn't where we thought it would be coming into the year. They had been having to win games passing the football, and they were not able to do that against Utah. So if they can't be more balanced, I'm not sure Alan Bowman is the guy who can beat you with his arm game in, game out. I don't think he can do it consistently. Now, they have good receivers at Oklahoma State, but if you don't have a quarterback that can get them the football on a consistent basis, how good can they be? I think that could potentially be their limitations there. And they also gave up 187 yards rushing to Michael Bernard. They've got to get that cleaned up. But I like Mike Gundy as a coach. I still think Oklahoma State's one of the top teams in the conference. So I'm only dropping them down one notch to a contender. Now let's talk about the other team who I had at top shelf, the Kansas State Wildcats. They dropped their game to BYU 38-9. That's right, BYU. They walked into a hornet's nest in Provo. Who saw that game coming? I didn't. I picked BYU to win 2 games all season. They're sitting here at 4-0 with one of the top defenses in all of college football, defeating a ranked team in week 3 of the season. What a season it has been so far for BYU. Now, that offense still has a long way to go to be good, but they're doing just enough to win. Jake Ratzlaff is doing just enough to win. They're struggling to run the football because they're down to their 3rd or 4th string running back. But again, they're doing just enough to win because that defense is elite, right? But when you look at Kansas State, because again, this is focusing on Kansas State, it's just hard not to rant on BYU, right? When you look at Kansas State, though, the story is Avery Johnson to me. Avery Johnson struggling to throw the football down the field. He was only 15 of 28 for 130 yards. Averaged, I think that's less than 5 yards per completion. Threw 2 picks, no touchdowns. Kansas State offense failed to score a touchdown. Not a good day for the Kansas State team, especially offensively. However, they have one of the best coaches in the conference, in my opinion. Avery Johnson should get better game in, game out because he's so young. They can still run the football at a decent rate. I still think they have a decent defense. So I'm only moving them down one notch to a contender. So right now, Utah is the only top shelf team in this league right now, as we sit here between week 4 and 5 of the season. All right. Let's go to the contenders. Iowa State. They did not play a Big 12 game, but they did play, and they played Arkansas State, and they thumped Arkansas State 52-7. Rocco Beck threw 18 passes, completed 11 of them for 204 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 1 interception. They did what they had to do. They beat a lower-level team soundly. I'm not ready to move them up to top shelf just yet because, it was a lower-level team. Now, if they can come in and beat a Power 4 team handily, then I'll move them up a notch. But right now, I'm leaving them as a contender for this conference. They're still a good football team, and I still think they have a chance to win the league championship. Now let's continue on the contender list with UCF. Do they move up or down this week? Well, they had a bye week, so I'm not moving them at all. The previous week, they had that come-from-behind win against TCU in Fort Worth. They're one of the best running teams in the country. They have a quarterback who can do the job in KJ Jefferson. They have a good coach in Gus Malzahn. The question for UCF is going to be that defense. How good will that defense be throughout the rest of the season? We didn't get a look at that this week again because they were on a bye, so I'm leaving them where they are as a contender. Let's move down to the end of the conversation. And the TCU Horned Frogs, and boy, did they have themselves a week, and I'm not talking about in a good way. They absolutely got boat raced by their rival, SMU. Now, I can't talk trash to SMU fans now about losing to a Big 12 team because they just boat raced one of them, and it happened to be their rival. TCU got boat raced. They committed 5 turnovers, committed 14 penalties, gave up 238 yards of rushing, and was only able to rush for 65 themselves. Only 2 yards per carry. That's 2 games in a row. They had a bad showing on the ground, only rushed for 58 against UCF. They can't run the football. They can't stop the other team from scoring. They're struggling right now. TCU, I'm a little bit worried about you. So I'm taking you from in the conversation all the way down to a bottom shelf team right now because, in my opinion, after this performance, that's where you deserve to be. Now, let's go to the Arizona State Sun Devils. They're next on the list. They lost 30-22 to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They struggled to run the football, only picking up 94 yards on the ground, 3.1 yards per carry. They didn't give up a ton of points to an explosive offense. They held Texas Tech to 30 points. It's not too bad considering Texas Tech scored, 60-some the previous week. And we're putting up points at a pretty rapid pace. So Arizona State's defense, I think, is pretty solid. I don't think they're great, but I don't think they're bad. Arizona State's not running the football on a consistent basis. Sam Leavitt's doing enough, in my opinion, to win games. Arizona State's a conundrum to me. They're 3-1 on the year. I don't think they're a contender, and I don't think they're bottom shelf, and I'm not even sure they're a pretender. So yeah, they're a pretender. I have a hard time leaving them there after losing the game. And I can't have them above Texas Tech, obviously, who I'll get to in a minute. So I'm moving them down a notch to pretenders. There's in year 2 of a coaching staff in a new conference. They're somewhat in rebuild mode still. Now, they're doing better than I anticipated them doing to start the year, but they are 0-1 in the league. And I don't think Texas Tech is necessarily a contender. So they didn't get beat, in my opinion, by one of the better teams in the conference. So I'm moving them down to a pretender. Now let's go to BYU. I started ranting on them a minute ago. Let's talk more about them. BYU. They have played 2 Power 4 opponents already this year in SMU and Kansas State. They have not allowed a touchdown to either of those teams. They're one of only 2 teams in the country who can make that claim, the other one being the Georgia Bulldogs. That's pretty good company to be in for that defense. The defense is elite. Here's another interesting stat for you, courtesy of the Big 12 Conference, by the way. BYU has not given up a passing touchdown in 4 games. The entire season so far, they have not given up a passing touchdown. That's elite. And as long as you're playing defense at that level, you're going to contend for the conference title, in my opinion. The offense, again, they need to improve offensively. I know a lot of their fans are not happy with their offensive coordinator. But, man, they don't have to be elite. All they've got to do is, man, if they can put up, 25 a game? 24, 25 a game, they're going to win some games probably with that defense. Now, they're not going to be able to do that in every game because they're eventually going to play some really good offenses in this league, and they're going to need to put up some points. Now, you might say, well, Couz, they put up 38, yes, but they had a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown in that game. So, technically, their offense only scored, 24? So, I think they need to do better than that on a consistent basis, but they're still going to win some games even with their offense playing the way they are. They're down to their, third or fourth string running back, so that's a concern. But again, as long as their defense keeps playing the way they are, they're a contender in my book. Now let's move on down to the Arizona Wildcats. They're on a bye week. They're 2-1 on the year. Their last game was against Kansas State. They got boat raced, so I'm leaving them as a pretender. No game, no change. The Baylor Bears. Heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking loss to the Colorado Buffaloes. Baylor was up. They were up 24-10 at one point in the first half. But in the closing seconds of the game, they're up 31-24 or whatever the score was. Shedeur Sanders throws up a Hail Mary in the closing seconds. It's completed in the end zone for a touchdown. Tie ball game, sends it into overtime. Colorado ends up winning the game 38-31 in overtime. Heartbreaking loss. Baylor fans, I feel your pain. West Virginia has done that. It hurts. I understand it. Baylor sitting here at 2-2 on the season. 0-1 in Big 12 play. They're struggling a little bit on offense. Sawyer Robertson was 11 of 21 passing. 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. Was also their leading rusher, but that's not saying a whole lot because the whole team only rushed for 82 yards. They're not getting a lot of production out of the running game right now. Baylor, to me, is still in somewhat of a rebuild mode. Even though Dave Aranda's back, he's got a new coordinator on offense. He took back over the play calling on defense. I still think Baylor's going to struggle. I don't think Colorado's a great team. They're great offensively, but I don't think they're a great team. So I still think Baylor is a pretender. I'm not quite ready to move them down to a bottom shelf. Or am I? I don't know, man. Yeah, let's leave them as a pretender. I don't think they're bottom shelf. All right. Let's move over to the Colorado Buffaloes. Shedeur Sanders, another great day. 340 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. The defense actually played, statistically, they played a decent game. 5 tackles for loss for the Colorado defense. Had a sack to go along with that. They continue to not be able to run the football very well, the Buffaloes, but they're 3-1 and 1-0 in the Big 12. They have good enough quarterback play and good enough receiver play to compete with anybody in the country. Shedeur Sanders is still getting sacked way too much, still getting hit way too much. I still think Travis Hunter is playing way too many snaps, and it may eventually come back to bite them. But for now, I'm moving Colorado up to end the conversation because I think, again, when you have a quarterback that's that good, you're going to be in a lot of games. And so for that reason, I'm putting Colorado as in the conversation, at least for now. I don't think they'll stay there. I think they're going to drop some games. But for now, they're in the conversation. Let's look at the next team The Cincinnati Bearcats. Cincinnati. This is a team coming into the year I thought was overrated. Or I'm sorry, underrated. I actually have them as a bowl team. Brendan Sorsby has ended up being a pretty decent quarterback for them. Brendan Sorsby on the day, he put up 188 yards passing for 2 touchdowns. They had 362 yards of total offense, 149 yards on the ground. I think Corey Kiner had a decent day with about 75 yards rushing ballpark. Their defense shut out Houston 34-0. And I know Houston's offense is struggling right now, but to shut out a Power 4 team is impressive. Cincinnati did it. So I'm moving Cincinnati up a notch to end the conversation with Colorado. If you're looking for a new sports book, look no further than our good friends over at BetUS Online Sportsbook and Casino. Right now, you get 150% bonus on your first deposit with the promo code YouTube150. In addition to that, your next 2 deposits, you get 125% bonus. These bonuses are up to a total of $2,000. Make sure you play responsibly, and you must be 18 years of age or older. Again, YouTube 150 promo code gets you 150% off, or 150% bonus rather, on your first deposit. The Texas Tech Red Raiders, they win 30-22 over Arizona State. But they still have some things to clean up. They committed 9 penalties in that game. Baron Morton only threw for 201 yards on like 24 completions, so doesn't look like they were making a lot of big plays downfield, but they did something that they should have been doing all along, and they handed that rock to Taj Brooks 27 times. To me, this Texas Tech Red Raider team will go as Taj Brooks goes. He needs to be the workhorse of this team, assuming he can withstand the beatings. But he needs a lot of carries every game in order for them to be successful, in my opinion. This game, they realized that. They did it, and they win 30-22. 30-22. If you run the ball well and you run it consistently, you don't have to put up 50 points to win games. I think their offensive coordinator figured that out this week against Arizona State, and they got a win because of it. They got their first conference win of the year. They sit at 3-1 on the year. I'm still not totally sold on Texas Tech, but for now, because they did win, they're 1-0 in the league. It seems like they're getting a little bit better each week. I'm putting them in the conversation. All right. Again, I don't think they'll stay there, but they're there for now. Now we've got to move down to the teams who were bottom shelf and or well the previous week. Let's start with my team, the West Virginia Mountaineers. They pulled off a big win, 32-28 over Kansas at home. They were losing by 11 points in the final 4 minutes of that game. They come back and win. Huge win for the Mountaineers in that regard because they were able to get that monkey off their back from their previous week's coming from behind loss to Pitt. They were able to flip the script and do the same thing to Kansas. Garrett Green threw for 295 yards, a couple touchdowns, ran the ball for over 80 yards, I think it was. Really willed that team to victory in the final couple drives of that game. The young man is just a flat-out competitor. He's a baller. He's a football player. Only completed 50% of his passes, but when he needed to make plays, he made the plays. He's a winner, and that's what he did. West Virginia's 1-0 in league play, 2-2 overall. They have a lot of weaknesses, especially in that secondary. They gave up over 400 yards of total offense to Kansas. Jalen Daniels had another week where he struggled to throw the football well, which helped out that West Virginia defense. But West Virginia did win the game. They are 1-0 in league play. So I'm moving them up from bottom shelf to a pretender this week. I think they deserve to be there. I still don't think they're in the conversation yet because that defense still has a lot of holes to fill, and I'm still not confident they're good enough offensively to overcome the defense's weaknesses. So I'm putting them as a pretender. The Houston Cougars, where should they be? They got throttled 34-0 to Cincinnati. Their offense is just bad. I thought their defense had been playing decent coming into this week, but, man, they give up 34 to Cincinnati. I got to move you down, Houston, to a well team. You're back in the well. I'd move you up for 1 week after beating Rice. You're back in the well. Kansas, do you remain in the well after the loss to West Virginia? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Jalen Daniels still looks bad. He only threw for 184 yards against the Mountaineers, a struggling defense that had been struggling to play the pass. He only threw for 186 yards. Now, in his defense, West Virginia was taking that away from him. They were playing their DBs off and making Jalen keep everything in front of him. But even with that, he should have been able to dink and dunk them to death. Now, there was some suspect play calling by the Kansas offensive coordinator in this game, which is another question mark for them. Their offense just cannot seem to get it going outside of their running game. Now, David Neal had another game over 100 yards. Highshaw had a good game running the ball, but they just cannot get anything going in the passing game. So teams are just going to load the box up and say, hey, come beat us with your arm. And right now, Jalen Daniels is a shell of himself and just can't do that. So I've got to leave Kansas in the well for now. They're 1-3 on the year. They're 0-1 in conference play, and they're struggling on offense. So I'm leaving them in the well. And a lot of people may say, Couz, why do you have TCU one level above Kansas? Well, I think, and that's a good question. Should I have TCU in the well? I don't know. I'm leaving them where they are for now. When I look at TCU's schedule, I still think there are some winnable games on there. I'm still convinced that Sonny Dykes a good football coach, and I'm not changing my mind on that. Now, I think Lance Leipold is too, but I'm not real happy with what he's got at coordinator right now at Kansas, especially on the offensive side. So this is my tier rankings for this week. I have Utah's top shelf, the only top shelf team right now. I have Iowa State, UCF, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State and BYU now as contenders. I have Colorado, Cincinnati, and Texas Tech as in the conversation. I have Arizona, Baylor, Arizona State, and West Virginia as pretenders. I have TCU as a bottom shelf team, and I have Houston and Kansas as the well of the conference right now. Let me know where I went wrong. Let me know where I went right. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I want to give a shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode. If you want to be a VIP channel member, don't forget to hit the join button below. Take advantage of the early videos I release occasionally, and you'll get your name shouted out as well in a video at some point down the road. As I do random ones every show, you'll get first dibs on comments and live streams as well. But the VIP members of this show are Todd Biela, Chris D, Matthew Sokos, Big Dan T, and Cody Cutright. Thank you all for your support. Again, the levels there are on the screen, $2.99 a month and $4.99 a month. The $4.99 a month gets you the early access to videos. Also, don't forget to do the free things that help me out. Like, share, comment, subscribe. It all helps that algorithm, helps this channel grow, helps me get to my next big goal of 10,000 subscribers. I'm on my way to 10K, baby. Help me get there. I want to remind you, we have a brand new show here on the channel called Matt's Big 12 Blitz. The last 3 weeks, it has been on Friday nights at 7 p.m. It will be moving now to Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Matt's Big 12 Blitz. He will go over the previous week's Big 12 games. He will preview the upcoming games in the Big 12, and he will give you his opinion on those games and his prediction. Right now, listen to this record. He's 12-3 on the year right now. He was right on all. He was right on all of his picks this past week, other than the BYU K-State game, and who saw that coming? To be honest, but he's 12-3 on the year in his picks. He's doing great. So come check out Matt's Big 12 Blitz. See what he has to say about last week's games and the games upcoming. Get his thoughts on that. It's right here on the channel. 7 p.m. Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. Don't miss it. I appreciate you tuning into this episode. Make sure you have a top shelf rest of your day or night. And regardless whether the Mountaineers win or lose, I will always cue Country Roads.